Hey guys, it's another Friday, another video. We're on lockdown. I can't get the video edited. I can't even put in the. Stop that. I can't put in the intro. Babes, let's sing the intro. Pew,
Come away with me. Come away
pew,
with me.
pew, pew.
Come away with me. Come away with me.
Down, 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 down. Down, 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 down. All right, so we're the original singers of the song, so we can do what we want to do with it. Hi, guys. So, sending you peace, love, and happiness to whatever part of the world, whatever time zone, whatever frame of mind, whatever state of health you are in. This dude is here with his 90s moves again. Yeah? How do you do it? This? Wee, mama. Okay.
Lockdown.
Yeah, and locking it down for real. Okay. So I'm going to share some thoughts. It won't be a long video. I always say that, right? And then, yeah. Anywho, gonna share some thoughts that, the whole lockdown thing just stirred up in my mind. The day before the lockdown, I had gone to an establishment to engage in some business, and the nature of the business is such that the providers were really small, like micro entrepreneurs, like really small business. And so by the nature of their business, it means that they would live off the daily takings usually, maybe just have enough for rent, but most of it is what they lived on a daily basis. So lunch was based on seeing a customer that day, dinner was based on seeing a customer that day. And when I saw this woman, she says, I've not had any customer for 2 weeks because people are just afraid of the virus, and the days I have to psych myself to get up and go to work because what's the point? And my assumption is that when she goes to work, she would then join forces with others in the area, and maybe grab a chip from someone's plate and a piece of meat from someone's plate, and that would be her meal for the whole day. But it got me thinking about the economic impact of this shaking of this virus. Now, remember that this show or this channel is called Life of Interruptions because very often I share on the various interruptions that have happened in my life, many of which, when they happened at that time, I wasn't convinced that they were positive, but I've since grown to see God's hand and how he moves things and works all things together for our good. And one story I want to share with you today was how a specific shaking brought about my own economic upheaval, which ended up being, I think, the best thing that ever happened in my life. So I used to work in the banks. I've worked for 2 of the big 4 banks. And my last job was in, one of the banks. I'm not going to mention names. And what usually happens in the banks ever so often, almost as frequently as we have, what's it called? When you change presidents? Elections. Almost as frequently as you have elections in nations, you have retrenchments and you have restructures in banks. And being in the position that I had been, I very often was in a position of determining who would be retrenched. Also, by virtue of my position, I would use job loss as a stick, as opposed to a carrot when there were certain things, specifically in one particular role that I played, where I was in service management, and the service really, really sucked. In our branches at the time, people were just, it was just a very low standard of service. And so we were trying to oomph the service up. I remember we had a 21-day program of service improvement, and I was going from branch to branch, doing spot checks on these items that we had enlisted had to be put in our service to improve the service. And people were threatened with job loss if they didn't toe the line. And our justification at the time was, clearly, if you're going to treat customers who are the very source of your income like rubbish, then you don't want the job. And there's so many others who do want the job, and let's give them a chance. And while that sounds all right on paper, it's a bit callous, I think. Now in retrospect, I can look back and I can see that it was a bit callous, it was a bit harsh because we never took into consideration possible mitigating factors that would influence how a person treated another. I mean, we had customers coming in and swearing at people with the F word, and they were rude. I remember my one boss at the time was like, he will not tolerate anyone treating the staff in a degrading manner. And if they would come in, as long as they would cross over to the point of using swear language, then we could not have a relationship with that person and the bank. And they would, come in and have these hissy fits and throw. And so we'll just give them, they didn't know that in the small print of our contract, it said, should there be a breach of the contract, we are able to call for the total amount owing at any point in time. And often you would find that the people who would give the hardest time had a very small bank balance, right? We found this very, very small bank balance. But they had huge debt and credit with the bank. So if they now were like acting up and we said to them, okay, you know what? Now can we please pay up. Pay up your entire home loan, your car loan, see the language change. And then suddenly be like, oh, we can talk about this. Let's not. I'm laughing now. I'm still coming to the story I'm trying to tell you, right? So chill. I'm not making fun of anyone. My lips are dry. Anywho, so, but then comparatively, because like many banks would have like the mass banking. So I worked in the mass banking section, and then they would have their investment banking section. And the investment banking section was made of the rich dudes, like people who were swimming in the dough. And the guys in service in those areas had it easy. But us in the mass banking section, our customers told us what time of day it was. And so when we compared notes with those guys who dealt with the rich and asked, but how are your clients so polite and so humble? And you know what we found out? We found that because they had walked in the road they had to travel to make the wealth that they now had, life had really humbled them, right? It had really beaten them up. They were like stones that started at the beginning of the stream and ended up at the bottom of the stream, smooth pebbles. The waters of life had really roughed them up. Entrepreneurship will teach you. It's not easy. It's very easy to have the security of getting up every day, going to the job, having an attitude with a job. 11:30, you're looking at the clock, you eat, you don't need to bother. You do your bit, you're guaranteed a salary there. But when you're the one who has to make it happen, and make sure stakeholders are happy, investors are happy, and you take the full brunt of the risk, and people are wondering about why'd you get paid so much? They don't know the struggle. So we found those guys to be a whole lot more humble. But anyhow, I've got a muscle pull in my back. So I'm trying to be romantical, my love. Hey, Mara. She's not feeling nice. There you go. Feels better. I like that you're just smiling in the corner. I ambushed him into the video, by the way. And he says, I know you. Now, 1, 2, 1, 2. You make me say something. And then tell me there's no editing. And there's no editing because there's no editor for 21 days. We must sit to finish. Okay. So, just looking at the financial situation that so many people were plunged into. I went to this establishment a day before the lockdown, and people were just in a state. And this woman who was serving me was panicking, right? She was just like, don't know what I'm going to do. Haven't had a customer for 2 weeks. I'm happy you're here. I don't know what's going to happen hereafter. I don't know how I'm going to live. I don't know how she had a brother that she was sending money to in Lesotho who was in a home for mentally disabled, and she had to send him money to eat regularly. And she was just saying, if this virus takes one of us, Lord, let it take him first so he doesn't need to hang around and suffer. These were the real problems people were going through. And I was just confronted by the economic impact on so many lives. Children who only eat at school, who now couldn't go to school. That I deal with widows. And I remember a story once of a widow who ended up in prostitution because after her husband died, no one came around to help with the children, help with the fees, help with the rent. Nobody was concerned with anything that was going on. But sure enough, when she now began to sleep around for money, and news went around, her pastor now came to do the normal correction. And she was just like, dude, you're not gonna tell me. You're not gonna tell me, because since my husband died, this is the first time you've walked into this house and you have no idea how we're coping. So yes, that's what I'm doing, and deal with it. And so we've had to reach in and help from time to time people like that. But I was reading a newspaper report of sex workers who were saying to the president, we're not expecting you to make us essential workers. Though there's some people who would swear that that's essential. They would swear that's an essential service. But anyway, in this report, they were saying, we're not saying make us an essential service. We're just saying consider the fact that we've been hard hit and we have no way to make ends meet. And one of the women particularly said she was a widow with 5 children, and since the death of her husband, there was nothing else she could do, no other industry she could compete in, and so she was a prostitute. Oh, my heart broke, because I remembered the reason why I go out and work with. I mean, there's so many marginalized groups in society, but my heart and my assignment is specifically at this time for widows, and it just reconnected me back to that story. Guys, I know I'm all over the show, but ish, you're not going anywhere. You've got 21 days to sit and listen to me. So allow me to tell you 5 stories in one, right? So the point I was now getting to was economic impact of such a life shaking. Now, after having played Miss High Boss and decided people's fates and people's lives, and you're fired, you're hired, you're blah, 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 I then fell under the gauntlet and I was retrenched. And I didn't see it coming. None of it made sense to me. Like, it didn't make sense. I was a high performer. I was doing well. There was no avenue of complaint about the work that I was doing. The area in which I worked just became redundant, period. And there was nothing we could do about it. I mean, I became like a deer caught in the headlights. I think I went crazy. I kid you not. We just had the 4th baby.
Before.
We just had the 4th baby. There was no medical aid. We were now going to be full-time in ministry. I'd never seen that. Like, I didn't know whether I was coming or going. And then to make matters worse, during a conference we were hosting at that time, I remember the first day of the conference, I was rushing home to get changed because I'd been setting up the venue. The venue was at Great Hall in Wits University in Braamfontein. And so I was quickly popping home to get dressed and then come back for the conference. And then I was involved in a bad crash. And our Merc was written off. And so we lose the Merc. We don't have a car at the time. Then I lose my job. It was a lot. And then I just had a baby. We don't have medical aid. And reality struck. It really, really struck. And we had to just trust in God. I remember people who I had, maybe had been of help to at some point in time. Now, the way I saw it, just suddenly didn't have time for me anymore. They were moving about their lives, and I was now the beggar, even if they had been my subordinates in the workplace previously. And I was saying, help me out. And is there another department? Is there something you can do for me? And they were just kind of like, for me, maybe they were doing the best they could. But for the one who was in the desperate situation, they just seemed a bit nonchalant. Like, I can't help you, can't help you. But I remember a story you told of when you were homeless on the streets and friends who you had helped now were not able to help you. Like, literally, they left you sleeping at a bus stop. Once confused for a thief and beaten and lynched, almost killed. The tire was already around your neck?
Yeah, no, it was vigilantes,
Yeah.
and they saw me sleeping in the bus stop, and they came, searched me out, and you're a thief. And I said, no, I'm not a thief. I just lost my house. And they searched me and they found just the toothpaste. And I put all my things in somebody else's, in a friend's house, and just had a ransack that had, the necessities. Yes. And some were slapping me, beating me, and they were about to, threatening me that they were going to kill me. And there was a police patrol that was passing, and the police patrol stopped, took a look at me, and the guy said, no, it's not a thief. That's how I was released from.
Yo, I would not have found him. He would not have
No,
found
but you
me.
see, God had a purpose for my life, and that purpose was going to preserve my life. Purpose would preserve your life if you're walking in the lines of destiny. So God was going to come through for me one way or the other. He chose to use the police that day to preserve me, just to, the worst I went through was in Benin Republic when I had gone to a place and that night I was in the clubs, and when I went back there, because the person whom I was staying with was there, thieves had gone to that place. And when I went back there, and they said, "Did you come here last night?" I said, "Yes, I came." I didn't know they were asked. They thought I was one of the thieves. How will I admit that I was one of the thieves? And then they were going to lynch me. I was looking at the sunrise and thinking, I'm going to die like this until somebody showed. I said, no, no, I saw this guy in the club. He's not one of the thieves. That's how I was spared.
Can you imagine,
So
man
I've
of
been
God?
through.
That was the only time it was good for you to be in a
No,
club. What
that
are you
was
doing in the
back in the
club?
days. I was still in the backsliding state. This was in the very this was in the 90s, in the early 90s, when I was still performing in nightclubs as a rap artist. Hello, hi, yeah.
I've told you, he can't rap.
Really?
We need to do a competition.
Okay.
I told you the one night that I was listening to a radio station in my varsity days, and they had just played the song on radio in which I featured rapping.
For
And
Ishmael.
yes, and the DJ, I think his name was Disky or something like that. He was like, "Who knows this girl?" Because I just rapped and I went underground. He was like, "This girl turned the song upside down. Who knows her? Where is this girl?" I just looked at the radio, smiled, and kept it moving. I had the moves, but you're distracting me, my friend.
Okay, let's continue.
Where were we? How did we get here?
Talking about life at risk and
Life at
being
risk.
abandoned by those who you
Yes.
blessed before.
Okay. So I mean, there were times when your apartment was like the haven for everyone
Yeah,
else. Come
yeah.
over, come stay.
Yeah.
And now the very ones who had come over and stayed when it was your turn were not available. I think
Absconded.
the greatest kindness you said you were shown was someone allowed you to sleep in their what? Parking
Staircase and the parking.
staircase,
Yes.
and then the parking.
The parking where there's parking without a roof. So when it rains, I will have to move my stuff, move myself out of, and stand until the rain is over. And then I was sleeping in the place without, that was. And my
Yeah.
mom came to meet me there, and we were about to
visit.
sleep there until somebody gave us. And we got a story to tell.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So you thought you'd help
Yes, people I'd given work to, given opportunities to, and I just thought would be available. My hair's a mess. We're just like, okay, they were busy. I mean, they had things to do, but at the time I was just like, no, man, you don't do this. You don't do that. I put things on hold for you. I would invite you into my home, to help you prepare for meetings and strategies and blah blah blah. And here I am, and you're treating me like this. But like he said at the time to me, concerning his ordeal, is that those people were not supposed to help because it was a cross he was supposed to
Yeah,
carry.
I believe that I was supposed to go through that.
Yeah, and it made you stronger. And
made
so
me
because of
stronger.
that, he wasn't bitter. And we would be looking to human beings to help. And God is saying, no, I need you to just go through this and endure this for a season. I'm not going to let anyone help you.
Yeah.
Because no man is God. And we must learn not to put our
You have to
dependency
carry that cross.
on men. So yeah, I went through this retrenchment, and very quickly the high life came to a complete standstill. But luckily, I had this soldier who is just I tell him all the time, he's just a man, he's a man about it all, and I could just lean in. The uselessness began to set in because I've always worked. I've never, not once did I come out of varsity and like, oh, I need to look for a job and start to. No, the work was always available. I would interview, I would get employed, we would move on. But in this circumstance, it was a turnaround. And so when I saw this woman thinking, how is she going to eat? What's she going to do? I remembered that time. I remembered the fear of not knowing what tomorrow holds. I remembered the change in economic circumstances and having to change your lifestyle, make decisions in a different way. And I remembered the humility that it brought, because all of a sudden there was that, flash of lives that I had, been callous with, when I had the power. I remember one lady, so she was the CEO's personal assistant or executive assistant, and her term for that position was coming to an end. And so she wanted to use the position, the advantage that it had given, to secure herself certain business deals before she left and had to go on the entrepreneurial route. And I, at the time, was busy cleaning up my department because there had been a lot of graft, a lot of just craziness. I mean, there was one guy who was earning millions from us on a monthly basis. And when I broke it down, I realized that his entire contract was only worth about 50 something grand per month. So I gave him the option: we're going to pay you 50,000 for this because we can do it in house, or you go, And he moved from over 1 million per month we were paying him to 50 grand a month. And I was going around doing this cleanup. So there was no way in God's green earth I was now going to take someone on just because she had the title of having been the CEO's executive assistant, and could name drop. And then now when I'm trying to save money, give her a contract where I had staff who could do this thing internally. And so I did not give her the contract. She held this thing. So I must tell you now, I'm retrenched and I'm in the job market, and she goes on to own a recruitment agency. And one of the agents of another agency had, interviewed me at her agency, and she was like, "You are a steal. I'm moving. I'm no longer going to be in this agency. I'm going to another one, and I think you would get on like a house on fire with my new boss. Could you please come and meet with her?" So I said, no problem. And she hooked up the meeting. I arrived there, I'm all dressed up, all waiting, all ready. And in comes her new boss. Her new boss is the lady I had just told, "I will not be giving you an unsolicited, unjustifiable contract just because of who you are." You know what she says to me, babes? Did I tell you the story? She meets me and she's just like, "Oh, please step into the boardroom." So I come into her boardroom. I'm already shaking. I'm like, yo, I've walked into it. And the lady who's introducing us is so excited, like, two powerhouse black women meeting. She's just excited to have made the connection. She has no clue that we have a history. So when she leaves us, the lady looks at me. Her look was like this. I want to do it well. She looks at me. She says, "I'm sure you remember me."
She was very
Woo! She got me, dude. She got me. I said, "Yes, I do." She says, "Very small world, isn't it?" I said, I guess. She takes me through some rubbish interview where she knows she has no plan to do anything with my life. And she's like, "Well, it's a tough market. I'll be in touch." Never heard from her. I got in the car. I can't remember if I don't know how I felt, but deflated.
But I think she was a stupid woman, honestly, because
Because I'm your wife and
no,
you
not
love me.
because of that. I mean, you look at the merits of the person. You want the person to give
I
you.
thought
Yeah, you look at the merits.
I thought that, that would earn me some kudos. It'll be like, she's got integrity and she
She's
operates with
principled.
integrity.
Yeah.
And principled. And who principled didn't do nothing for you, girl. It did nothing for me. So from that day to this, I have not worked formally. I've been invited to and have enjoyed this upheaval that the Lord threw me into so much that I've just been like, I'm not going back.
But if you wanted, you could have gotten a job. I mean,
I know. I mean, there was headhunting going on, but when I came to realize, and I think this is the point of the video, when I came to realize the reason for why the Lord had taken me out of that place, the ability to, we were on child number 4 when that happened. We now have 10. There is no boss that would have allowed me that kind of maternity leave, come and go every year, to go and be having that. But this was my destiny, not building bricks for Pharaoh. And I've not got no disrespect for anyone who is in a 9 to 5, that's where their skills are best to be used. But this was my destiny, to instill the kind of conversations I can have with my children, to be their teacher, to, bring the best out of them, to watch them grow, not to hear secondhand from a teacher, and hear about first words or first steps but never see them, which was what was happening with the first 3, because I was about that boardroom grind at that time. So life has taken a huge adjustment. We've come full circle. Life is good. I'm happy. In retrospect, I understand what the interruption was about. But the fear that I saw in the eyes of so many who were thinking, and there's so many today, I mean, business owners who had to tell their staff, people who are going to have to be laid off after these 21 days. And I can't try and play it down, it's something you have to go through for yourself. But I think where I'm coming from is to say that I know what you'd be feeling. I know the uncertainty about facing such a future, even the fear therein. But you come to a point, if you really take stock of everything you've been through, everything you've conquered, everything you've overcome, at this point, you really know fear ought to be afraid of you. That's the honest truth right there. You've proven yourself over and over again. Why you keep getting afraid when a new challenge comes up, I don't know. You need to know that it's a setup for your step up. And you've proven yourself. You've done it before, and you're going to do it again, because the God who was by your side then hasn't changed. He's still here. He's still in the business of shaking things up to make things up. And it's only going to be better thereafter. I'm just getting this sense of like the phoenix rising, People going down, seemingly going under. What they didn't know is that you're a seed, not a corpse. And so they've buried you, and you're only going to grow into this huge, majestic tree.
Amen.
That'll give cover and fruit and nurturing and succor to so many, So your time is just beginning. Amen. God is on your side. Amen. It's going to be fine. Amen. The disease won't get you down. It won't take your peace. It won't take your future. It won't take your joy. Everything's going to be okay. It might be 10 children later that you look back and realize, losing that job was the best thing that ever happened. Some of you might lose work. You might lose customers. You might lose opportunities. But around the corner is another one waiting. One door closes only because you're supposed to walk into another. Trust the process. Trust God. Love you much. Love you plenty. Like, subscribe. Put your hand in the shot properly. Your 90s moves. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And sorry we don't have any formal intro or outro. I can actually see the video trying to adjust with the lighting, because it's night and we're just using normal lights in the room.
Come away with me. Come away with me.
Bow, 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 bow. Bow, 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 bow. Love you guys. God bless. Bye-bye. Have you voted, by the way? Vote. Mrs. South Africa, tell them to vote for your wife.
Please vote for my queen, for Mrs. South Africa 2020, Pearl Osa. Go to mrsSouthAfrica.co. Is it Oscosa?
No, babes, it's Facebook.
Oh, Facebook, yes. It's Facebook.
Have you voted? How don't you know where to go?
Yeah, I voted. But there's also SMS numbers.
Yes, the SMS numbers have opened up now. So if you check my Instagram page or my Facebook page, the Pearl Osa Tammy Taylor, Mrs. South Africa 2020 page, you will see all of the deets. Love ya. Bye-bye.